Hey guys, so the balance patch have hit, and there's quite a few changes that have come in. So I'm going to give you my take on like the best classes in two parts, right? I'm going to do the first one is like a leveling tier list, and the second part is more of an end game tier list. So when you're trying to push those nightmare dungeons, killing Uber Lilith and stuff that way. But there have been some significant changes in some bits, and then not so much in others. Some classes have been hit really hard, for example, like the Sorc. We'll get into that later. But yeah, let's just start off straight away with like a leveling tier list. All right. The first class that I want to go through here is Sorc. Sorc's leveling experience is actually really good. It's actually solid. The class early game and going into the mid game actually performs very well. Late game, different kind of story, but for leveling, I'm actually going to pop Sorc all the way up in A. There have been some nice changes with like, obviously like vulnerable damage, if you don't know, vulnerable damage got nerfed, critical damage got nerfed, but damage over time got buffed. So things like burning would be pretty good. And I think Firewall on Sorc, where you can just kind of plant one down in the pack and run early game as well, especially you can kind of put one Firewall into a pack. You spec it so that it continues to burn after they've gone through. You can put one, maybe two, and you can wipe an entire pack while you're still running. So the leveling experience for Sorc will be good. I did actually think that Ice Shards was going to see a nerf. They nerfed a lot of other things. Ice Shards didn't get touched. So as an Ice Shards leveling experience as well, you're going to have a lot of fun. Sorc early mid game, absolutely solid. Yeah, I can't complain with that. When it comes to Druid's leveling experience is actually probably the worst. Druids are late game shiners, but early game they are a lot slower. There's a couple of skills that are okay. There is like a landslide build, which is all right. Pulverize is still really nice, but you have to find the aspect for it, which is a bit frustrating because if you don't get it, you can't use Pulverize. Suffers a bit from single target, but leveling experience with Pulverize is actually really cool. Looks really cool, and you can wipe the whole screen. Tornado is strong. I've got a build for Tornado out on the channel. I've got leveling builds actually on the channel anyway, if you want to check out leveling builds for every class. But yeah, Tornado is pretty good, and something that's actually taken me by a little bit of surprise actually with Druid is Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm, so you got to channel it, so you can't like move as much. It kind of saves the charges though, so when you channel it, if you don't know, you channel Lightning Storm, it does like one zap, then like two zaps, then three zaps. You can spec it so that it holds on to those like charges basically. So if you chain it up to like multiple strikes, run forward, you get 6 seconds, and it kind of holds the amount of charges. You can build up some more spirit, you do it again, and bam. Actually very strong early game. Late game drops off a little bit, but for leveling, actually Lightning Storm is pretty good. But the whole Druid experience, like even getting your class mastery is pretty slow. The quest for that actually takes a lot longer than a lot of the other ones. Plus you have to find all the spirit boons, and you have to keep going back, or you just build them all up and go at once. Leveling experience with Druid kind of sucks, but it is definitely a late game bloomer. So if you are keen for a late game class that's going to dominate Druid, but the leveling experience very slow, clunky, lots of spirit issues, although they have fixed a little bit. Now with Trample, when you use Trample and you spec into it, right, you actually gain, instead of 20 spirit, you actually now gain 40. They've doubled it. So that actually feels quite nice. I've already tested this. That feels quite nice. And you can also use your Howl to get some more spirit. So your spirit regeneration is not too bad. But yeah, the overall experience with Druid is slow and clunky, but late game, amazing. Necromancer. So Bone Spear is really good still. Bone Spear got nerfed in about 9 different ways, but is actually still really strong. It is still strong. A bit of essence kind of issues as you're leveling through, but overall, it's not too bad. And you can kind of just spam Corpse Explosion and get essence back. Minion buffs. Yeah, there's been quite a few minion buffs for Necromancer as well. So overall, I think the leveling experience, I don't think it's going to be as quick or as nice as Sorc for like the early game. So I think for Necromancer, I'm going to pop this into B. I still think that it is quite nice going through. You've got a little bit lack of mobility early game. That's one of the reasons why I think Sorg is going to be a lot nicer. You've got the teleport. But the overall experience going through the game, you can actually do some good damage. Minion builds are going to be pretty good. And also, as I say, Bone Spear is also going to be good. There's also some nice buffs and things and changes that have happened, like blood builds. So Blood Lance, for example, has been changed. That could actually be really, really nice now. There's a new aspect for that. So we'll see if that's good. But at the moment, my kind of initial feeling is that Necromancers are going to be good, just a little slow. Just need to find movement speed on like your boots and amulet and stuff, and then that will really help like kind of pick up the pace. But overall, I think Necromancers are actually in a good spot. Next up, we have Rogue. Rogue is ridiculously fast. They've had their survivability nerfed a little bit. They've had the siphoning strikes, maybe more than a little bit. Yeah, the siphoning strikes basically used to give you like health back on critical hit. It's now a lucky hit chance, so you get significantly less than that, so you've got to use a few more potions. But the overall leveling experience for Rogue is phenomenal. You are so quick. You have basically everything. Apart from now that sustains come down a little bit, but other than that, you're really fast with like insane mobility. The damage is absolutely incredible. The leveling experience is going to be really fun. Something like Twisting Blades is just, you're just going to blitz the game. You're going to feel really good while doing it. Inner Sight is outrageously good for keeping your resource up. So yeah, Rogues overall, not too much changed. They're just a really well balanced class. There's even like range builds and stuff you could do that are really, really strong. Overall, I think Rogues are still going to be the best levelers. They're going to be really, really quick going through the game. Lastly, for leveling, we have the Barbarian. So the Barbarian is okay. Leveling definitely picks up a bit later, a bit more closer to hitting level 50. Once you start getting all those skill points in, it starts to pick up a bit more. Early game, the Rend Bleed build is still pretty good. You kind of go like Hota up until about level 8. It's kind of meta. And then at level 8, you swap it out and you go Rend for a bleed build. They are a little slow early on. They're definitely not like on the level of like Rogue or Sorc. I don't think they're even quite on the level of a Necromancer. I am tempted to put it in B, but I think overall, because it's a bit more clunky early on, I think Necromancers can probably push a bit harder, a bit faster. So I'm going to put it into C tier. Now this, remember, is just the early game leveling experience. If you agree or disagree with this, let me know down below. Totally fine. I'd love to get you guys' opinions. But that's the leveling. That's the leveling guide. So leveling tier list, even that, I think, actually will be pretty accurate. But keen to see what you guys think. Now for late game, this is quite different. Starting off with Sorc again. So I actually was going to be maining Sorc for Season 1. I did a lot of Sorc for the pre-season. I had an absolute blast. I've completed a solo tier 100, a duo tier 100, a trio tier 100 on Sorc. Ice Shards was actually pretty good. There's been some frustrations with Sorc around kind of the fact that if you wanted to do big damage, you had to use the staff. And that meant you had less lucky hit. And it also meant you had a lot less cooldown reduction. And Sorc's damage kind of came from like a combo of using Raymond's unique chest. You'd teleport in, it would pull things in and stun them. Then you would freeze them and make them vulnerable with Frost Nova. You'd use some form of Immobilize from like the Fist of Fate or like Meteor, something like that, to be able to stack up all of those forms of CC. And then you would kind of like triple dip into the aspect of control. Put that on a two-handed staff, and you would get a ton of damage. That paired with Devouring Blaze actually would make crits, for example. Like with Meteor, take Meteor, for example. I could do a normal crit, just firing a Meteor down on the mob for maybe like 200k at level 100 with some insanely good gear, like 200k. And then if I made things like stunned, frozen, vulnerable, and immobilized, that would go from like 200k to about 6 million. I'm not even kidding. That's how powerful it like ramped up. But you had to have all those conditions. The problem is aspect of control has been fixed, so it's no longer, you can't like triple dip into it, so it's now 20% rather than like 60%. So they've had a huge nerf there. And then also Devouring Blaze's critical damage. Now I had tier 6 of the Devouring Blaze passive because I had +3 ranks on Amulet. You put 3 ranks in. That would give me, when things are immobilized, 150% critical damage multiplier. So it was absolutely massive. So that's where you'd get like all of that combined. You'd go from like 200k hit to like a 6 million hit. That has all been nerfed into the ground with no other kind of buffs. To like Meteor hasn't been buffed. Ice Shards hasn't been buffed. All these other things haven't been buffed. And unfortunately, that has left Sork with, comparatively to preseason, like 60 to 70% less damage. I kid you not, about 60 to 70% less damage. So Sorks are all the way down in D tier. I would actually put them down here in fail tier. I'm a bit gutted about this because I really enjoyed Sork. I put a lot of effort and time in learning the class and doing builds and things. However, if I'm just being real with you guys, it sucks. It absolutely sucks when you compare it to the other classes. If you're doing content on your level, it's okay. But compared to the other classes, it's not even close. Like, it's outrageously bad. I highly recommend, unless they do any kind of drastic fixes, like today or tomorrow before the season, just stay away from Sork. You'll have a nice leveling experience. You get to endgame and realize you are trashed here compared to all the other classes. I know that was a lot of information, but I wanted to be very clear that Sorks, kind of my favorite class, are terrible, and I will not be playing it for Season 1. Next up, we have the Druid. So the Druids for the leveling tier list were in the D tier. Now, going through, Druids didn't have that many changes. Druids are still outrageously good for endgame. Outrageously good. One of the main things they had changed was like the Grizzly Rage aspect, where you were unstoppable for like the whole duration, and you could have that going pretty much non-stop, where you could make yourself into like a dire werewolf. And there are a lot of builds around that. There's Shred, which is like a Flicker Strike, if you know that from like Path of Exile or whatever. Flicker Strike is amazingly fast, like at clearing things, so you can kind of do that with a Shred build. You can also do like Tornado build, Werewolf Tornado. That is very, very, very strong. Possibly one of it, actually maybe is the strongest build in the game, other than potentially Bulwark. The Bulwark build is outrageous. We and like the community all thought that was going to get fixed, and guess what? It hasn't. That is like the easiest build to be able to like clear through tier 100s, because you just using like defensive skills, you stack loads of defense, and it scales with nightmare dungeons. So the higher the tier, the more damage you do. It's crazy that this all comes together, and it hasn't been fixed, hasn't been changed. So with all of those kind of builds, it's a very versatile class. There's even more builds you can do. There's like Storm Strike and things you can do. Druids, easily S tier for Season 1. They are easily S tier. I don't think at endgame any other class with a full-on build is going to do this. You are going to demolish nightmare dungeons, even with all the nerfs to damage reduction. A lot of the affixes on gear and stuff have all been nerfed down, like damage reduction from distance, damage reduction from close, all that kind of stuff has been nerfed. Total armor has been nerfed. Druids are still going to shred through late game, and also they are going to destroy Lilith. So if you want a long-term class where it starts off slow but gets off the best, Druid. I'm actually going to be playing a Druid for Season 1. My two classes that I really like and really wanted to play since like beta have been Sork and Druid. So they're now like, they're on top there. I don't know what else to say. Druids are fantastic. Necromancers have had, as I said before, they've had Bone Spear nerfed in about 9 different ways. 9 different ways. Like vulnerable damage nerfs, critical strike damage nerfs, skill like aspects nerfs. It's been nerfed a lot, and that brings it down more in line with a lot of its other builds. There's been some changes to Blood, and there's been some changes to like Blood Lance, you know, that should be or could be actually very nice. So a Blood build for Necromancer might be a lot more competitive now compared to his other builds. Minion builds have been buffed. There's been some changes to them. So I honestly feel that Necromancers are still in a really good spot. I still feel, even with a lot of the nerfs to Bone Spear, the Necromancers are still going to be solid with a Bone Spear build. It's still going to be really nice for leveling. And there's also a new heart where you can do up to 75% more damage. One of the new Season 1 hearts, the Malignant Heart. So that It's crazy. So they've had all these nerfs down, but then you could use that heart and get 75% more damage. So honestly, something like Bone Spear is still really solid. Survivability has been nerfed down. They are going to struggle that way. They're going to struggle a bit with Unstoppable. And I'm kind of umming and ahhing, if I'm honest, between A tier and B tier, because they cannot compete with Druids. And the survivability makes it, do I want A or do I want B? I feel like the damage is still going to be there. And unless proven otherwise, with maybe some minion builds that come out from these changes that are actually good, so that they can distract mobs and tank things for you, which might actually work. We'll see. I feel like I'm going to put Necromancers in B, possibly A, but I'm going to leave them in B just based off survivability. For the other ones then, this is actually going to be quite hard. Trying to place Barbarian, it's had like Hota has been fixed. There was a bug that you could hit and it would slam down, and around the outside it would do more damage than intended, which actually was pretty good. Now that that's been fixed, it's like a kind of like a 50% kind of damage nerf to like Hota. I still think Hota is going to be really strong. Whirlwind builds are still going to be there, but for pushing high-end content, I'm not sure. Even like Lilith, I think like Hota still could be all right for Lilith. But then we've had, for example, we've had nerfs to max stat, like your main stat, for example, on weapons. And obviously Barbarians use 4. So you could scale and stack 4 different like strengths across like all your weapons. That's been nerfed by 50%. So the amount of stats and things that Barbarians are going to have, that's tricky. It's tricky. At endgame, when they're pushing, they can be reasonably tanky, but again, I've got to say, I think with these changes that have happened, the damage reduction has come down. If you're going to be trying to push like tier 100s with it, I'm kind of in the mindset now that I think Barbarian's also going to be in like B tier. I don't know if you're going to be able to push a higher dungeon than a Necromancer, or if it's going to be basically a massive skill issue, depending on the player, and if they've got like really good gear, who's going to be able to push higher? Because Necromancers are going to have good damage with not much survivability. You've got your, unless minion builds, obviously, but you've got your Blood Mist, but you struggle, you know, if you're at 90 plus, basically just going to be getting one shot. I don't know if Barbarians, honestly, with these changes, things that happen, are going to be able to survive any kind of easier. Plus, then they don't really have the range. At least with like Necromancers, you could put down even like maybe like a Bone Prison and Bone Spear in. You could kind of trap enemies in and kill them at distance. Now, it comes down a little bit as well to what Nightmare dungeons we get. And what the mobs are like when we're trying to push, like maybe even like tier 100s. I don't know. I don't think, honestly, in my head, that Barbarians are going to be doing any more or any better than a Necromancer. So I mean, they are more tanky. I'm going to put them in B tier for this. Yeah, I'm going to leave Barbarians in B tier. Now, Rogue. Rogues didn't get too many changes. They are still very versatile. They're still very fast. They've still got, you know, range builds. They've got melee builds. They do, however, have a lot less survivability. And now the survivability has gone down. So I think as well, rogues are going to kind of struggle a little bit. Now that Siphoning Strikes has been changed and you don't have that insane healing from before and the damage reduction has come down, I'm not sure how far you're going to be able to push. Can you push further on a rogue than you can with a Necromancer or a Barbarian? And my honest answer at this point is I don't think so. I don't think so. I think for endgame Nightmare pushing, they are going to be higher skill cap. They're a lot faster. I think a very skilled player might be able to do it. Now, it depends how hard these changes actually hit us. But overall, I think for the average player, I think this might be our tier list. If we were to bring things a bit closer, you could do something like this. But honestly, Druid is just significantly like an extra tier above this. It just is. Druids are just incredibly strong, and Sorks have been nerfed so hard. I honestly feel like this is more accurate. There is an argument for maybe the survivability on Druid. Could push it up. But not on Druid, sorry, on Barbarian. However, I don't know. I kind of feel that this is going to be a more accurate representation of what people are going to experience at endgame. Druids are just going to be leaps and bounds above the others. You're going to have people that are really skilled with the classes, pop it there. People that aren't so skilled with the classes, maybe pop them here. Sorks are just going to get smashed all round, left, right, center. So honestly, I feel like this is a kind of more accurate and I've tried to be like not biased and just give you guys my honest opinions on what's going to happen here. We'll see what happens with any other builds and things that come up. But honestly, this is how I feel it's going to go. Remember, guys, as well, I have leveling builds for all of these classes already ready for Season 1. I did it just before the patch notes, but they are all still 100% relevant. There wasn't anything that got changed so significantly that it's not worth doing those builds. So I'll leave that link to that video down below. And if you like it, give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below. And remember to sub, stream on Twitch, all that good stuff. Until the next one, I'll see you very soon. Peace out.